Hello, this is Joe, and I'm going to read some more from the Talmud Jmmanuel. The following is to be explained concerning wisdom. Fundamentally, two forms of wisdom are given. The first is the wisdom of expertise concerning a specific material subject area, or several of these. This wisdom arises as the highest intellect-based and rationality-based essence of cognition, understanding, and ability from the obtained material expertise, where no life-based, creational law-based, or life experience-based factors, etc., whatsoever are integrated therein. Wisdom in this sense is based on a science in the sense of exact material research and organized oneness of knowledge, understanding, using, and ability, and it forms the entirety of the science concerned, its task and results, in which case, however, it has nothing to do with discernment. Rather, it is essentially only interested in that which is useful in each case in the subject area or knowledge area concerned, and is in no wise adequate, not even in the slightest iota, to justify a life attitude. Secondly, concerning spiritual consciousness-based and creational law-based wisdom, stands as highest essence the cognition, the knowledge, the understanding, and the following of the creational laws in discernment, maturity, rationality, experience, and the living of it, and ability. This gives rise to true internal and external love, freedom and harmony, as well as peace and equalizedness, all of which become a reality, as also does an essential life experience through a conscious use of these high values through conscious rationality and conscious intellect. Wisdom, in this sense, includes knowledge resulting from understanding, experience, and the living of the same, from which also result the right appraisal of things and human beings, as well as the life attitude and manner of thinking, feeling, acting, and behaving of the human being arising therefrom. This form of wisdom is bound, as a whole of the thoughts, feelings, knowledge, experience, and living of such, and actions, directly to the mental block, and to the personality, as well as to the character, and it is built up from and born by these. Ruler of the human species. When there is talk concerning the extraterrestrials, or the extraterrestrial JHWH, also known as Ishwish, as the ruler over the human species on the earth, no tyrant, Gewalt ruler, is to be understood by ruler, as has often been understood in the earth-human sense, since time immemorial, as a result of the tyrannical power, Gewalt, of such rulers. In the case of an extraterrestrial ruler over the human species, it does not concern a ruler who exercised tyrannical power, Gewalt, or a ruler who exercised might, and it does not concern a dictator, lord, or regent, but rather in Ishwish, that is Ishwish, connected with the people, who only acted according to the will of the people, and who also led these in wisdom and taught and was an important advisor. By virtue of his office, he could also present suggestions to the people, which he could then carry out with his helpers when it was the will of the people. Important facts, which are to be explained first, with regard to the content and the real story of the Talmud Jmmanuel. It must first be explained that there is no Old Testament, and also has never been one. The book, which is known as the Bible, is not even a religious book, but rather a fantastically composed Jewish chronicle in which, however, also handed down facts with regard to political and historical events, people and cities, as well as descriptions of landscapes, etc., have been worked in. In addition, everything has been presented like this, that everything turned out in favor of the old Hebranos and God believers. See also Pentateuch. And altogether, the Bible has no relationship whatsoever to the so-called Christianity or to a so-called Emmanuelism, as Emmanuel's teaching was the spiritual teaching or the teaching of the prophets, which he offered for the understanding of the human beings in accordance with his time. The existing books, the Bible and the New Testament, must not be taken as ideals because these concern pronounced irrational teachings and because both works are not directly connected with the effective truth, as is deposited in the storage banks. The real facts look completely different than what the two falsified works mentioned want to make the belief-driven Christians believe. The first scroll with the teaching of Jmmanuel was written by Emmanuel's disciple, Judas Iscariot, who was later maliciously accused as Emmanuel's traitor. In truth, however, it was not he who was the traitor, but rather a Pharisee's son, Judas Iscariot. As you notice, their last names are spelled differently, who by order of the priests crept into the circle of Emmanuel's male and female disciples as one supposedly interested in the teaching. The first records that Judas Iscariot made concerning the teaching of Emmanuel, however, were stolen from him by the Pharisee's son, Judas Iscariot, and were sold to the priests. This scroll, however, was then destroyed by the priests after the nailing of Emmanuel to the stake. After the loss of the scroll, Judas Iscariot made a second one. Emmanuel's teaching, which he taught, was the teaching of the prophets, which leads back in its origination to Nicodemus. Even the second scroll, which Judas Iscariot made, found no dissemination. Rather, at a later point in time, it was cast in a resinous roll and concealed in Emmanuel's tomb cave. Consequently, the whole thing never reached the public. The scroll was translated into the German language in cooperation with the Greek Orthodox lay priest named Isa Rashid, only after Billy Edward Albert Meier, known as Bean, had found the resinous roll containing the records with his help. Isa Rashid created the translations of the scroll in accordance with his learned lay knowledge and in accordance with his Christian belief, with the result that he wrongly equated the traditional term JHWH, Ishwish, equaling King of Wisdom, with God, just as he also left out the fact that also a number of female disciples followed Emmanuel, and he did so because this fact was foreign to him and did not fit into his learned Christian belief. This error was then, unfortunately, also taken over into the first edition of the Talmud Jmmanuel that appeared in book form, which has now been corrected in the right manner in the new edition. Another serious and traditional error has crept in by Isa Rashid, also with regard to the Virgin Maria. Now, Since the Talmud of Jmmanuel has been reworked and corrected, it has been revealed with the aid of information from the Arahat Athersater level and from the storage banks, as well as from the Pleiadian records, that concerning the mother of Jmmanuel, Maria, the speech was not of a virgin, Jungfrau in German, but rather of a young woman, Junge Frau in German. Equally, a very bad translation error has crept in with regard to the feeding of the 5,000, chapter 16, where Jmmanuel is supposed to have increased 5 loaves and 3 fishes for 5,000 human beings, listeners, in such a wise that everyone had enough to eat. Now, it has been found that the wise Isa Rashid had translated, or rather had taken over from his lay priesthood and translated. The whole thing is not correct, because old records of the Pleiadian show 2 other figures, one namely 253 human beings who were present at first, but then went away. So there ultimately remained only 51 people to whom food was distributed. The very accurate data of the Arahat Athersater level and the storage banks show the same number of human beings who were at first present at Jmmanuel's teaching, but many of these went away, after which then, in the end, 51 people still remained and were fed, where the number 51 refers to all people present, so also to the male and female disciples and to Jmmanuel himself. It is to be said that the falsifications of the teaching of Jmmanuel already took place through his male and female disciples, where Paul put the principal falsifications into the world, but this also happened with the other male and female disciples of Jmmanuel, not out of maliciousness or for other lower reasons, but from a profound lack of understanding, misunderstanding, and from misinterpretations with respect to the teaching, as well as concerning delusions with regard to the reality and the truth of it. And unfortunately, since all male and female disciples, except Judas Iscariot, were unknowledgeable of reading and writing, monstrous falsifications also came about because of that. This happened in the wise that the male and female disciples, who were unknowledgeable of reading and writing, to whom also Paul belonged, allowed their thoughts in their wrong understanding of Jmmanuel's teaching to be written down by scribes who, of course, interpreted everything themselves and thus falsified everything further. Goodbye.